the issue of medical bankruptcies in our country, the inability for major systems to kind of reconcile, one program, another program, and, one hand saying, well, we can do this for you, but if you accept it, then it's going to disenroll you or make you ineligible for the very services that you need to stay whole and in your home. And if I read correctly the second story that you are moving in for a period of time with your mother, but that you might have some other adventures ahead. So whatever, I'm not exactly even sure which assembly district you're a resident of, but whoever your assembly member is, I hope that we can continue to engage with you and try to provide you any supports that we can. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I don't know if did you have some concluding thoughts for this portion of the presentation?
Well, being a caregiver for my wife was one of the most challenging, hardest things I've ever done, but it was certainly a blessing. A lot of spouses are unable to be a caregiver for their significant others because of they're physically unable or financially unable or psychologically unable, and I was just so blessed to be able to be there with my wife, and that she didn't have to go be in a care facility, because she wouldn't have lasted, and her quality of life would have been greatly diminished. And so she was so happy to be able to be at home surrounded with her loved ones and her animals and familiar things, and that's what you wanted to do, was die at home. And I know
just like Mr. Bell's father, he said he just wanted to be at home.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm glad that the Sacramento Bee did the story and put pressure upon Bank of America to keep them from evicting us, because that would have been so devastating, trying to, just to move out just for her to die, and so.
I think we should try to figure out a way to do that better. I think corporate responsibility could be improved. Thank you very much, Mr. Findley. If I can now, let me turn to Jenya Cassidy, who's the California Policy Director for the Labor Project for Working Families. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you for having us. And I really have been so inspired today. I feel like, at this hearing everybody speak, that we're really part of this community that really cares about these issues and wants to work together to find some solutions to this issue that's going to keep getting bigger and bigger for all of us. I think everybody in this room knows and understands that eventually most U.S. families are going to be involved in some form of caregiving sooner or later. It doesn't always have to come with old age, as we know. But with old age, we know that it's very likely. And because such a high percentage of us are involved in some form of caregiving, of course that means a lot of workers are involved in caregiving. And, it's very hard to be a caregiver, and many workers are family caregivers and, have these other responsibilities. People like me, I have 3 children, and I'm also help my mother take care of my grandmother. And it's very challenging to be, on both sides of that. And I think that, when we think about it, well, what do caregivers need in the workplace to keep on working? Because most of us depend on our incomes. It's very difficult. As we know, there's just not enough support for people who are not working. There should be, because I don't know if working all the time is the answer for everybody. But when we are working, what people need are flexible work schedules. They need time to spend with their loved one, the person they're caring for. They need job security, and that includes having some protection when they do take time off, as well as not being discriminated against for having these caregiving responsibilities. Financial security, support, and education are really key. And I would say unions, and not everybody is in a union, we know, but some way to use your voice at work for all of the above, because to be able to ask for those things in today's workplace is very difficult. And as we know, when you have a union or some kind of support network at work, that really helps. So what do we have? In this country, in this state, we have slightly better things. We have the Family Medical Leave Act, and in California, it's the California Family Rights Act, which gives us the 12 weeks of job-protected leave. But that is, if you work for a large enough employer, you've worked there for a long enough time, enough hours. So it's not everybody. And also, when you do take time off, you can care for your spouse, you can care for your child, or you can care for your parent, and you can care for your domestic partner in California. That's not FMLA, but it is our California Family Rights Act. And then we also, in California, we're one of 2 states in the country that have a functioning paid family leave program, which my organization worked with a lot of the groups, and especially some of the unions, on passing back in 2002. And it's a wonderful program, but the problems with that are also it's only for certain family members. So you can, families have changed a lot in the last however many years. California is one of the places that multi-generations live in one place. I just read the other day that Norwalk, which is just outside of LA, has the highest rate of multi-generations living under one roof. It's cultural, but it's also the economy is making that, absolutely necessary for so many people. So many people need to care for their siblings. They need to care for their grandparent. My mother had a stroke. She has physically a harder time caring for my grandmother. So in many ways, I'm more able and available. But there is work right now in our statewide coalition on trying to, extend these policies to other people. We also have paid sick days, which if you have paid sick days, you can take half of that time. But that's limited. 48% of Californians have paid sick days right now, and that's going down because we're losing quality jobs. And with paid family leave, one of the issues that we confront is education. Union households are of a really high percentage of knowing about it. And there was recently a field poll study by Milkman and Applebaum that I think Robert gave everybody in an attachment. And it showed that awareness of the program is down, which is really sad because we pay into it, workers pay into it. It's a very healthy fund. The federal government's now borrowing from it, so we know it's a very healthy fund. And, it's our money, and when we need it, when we have a family emergency and we need to take time off, we should have access to that money. But part of it is that people need to be educated that they have that right. Something like 42% of people had heard of it. So a lot of people who have a qualifying event don't take advantage of it because they haven't heard of it. The numbers go down when it's new immigrants, low income. For some reason, Los Angeles County has the lowest amount of awareness. So we would like to figure out ways to have policy where we can put some funding into really solid, effective ways of educating workers about this policy.
We'll have to talk to the LA members about that.
Yes, we are, and we need to. And so that's, in closing, I think one of the things that I once spoke at this panel, and it was for the American Library Association, and the panel was entitled, I'm coming in late and I have to leave early. And that's the situation for a lot of caregivers. And it was really interesting because I was there to give my spiel about these are some policies we're working on. This is what you can negotiate with your union if you have one. And people were interested in that, but they're librarians. They can look that stuff up, right? But what they really came for was the support and linking up to other people who had the same thing. And when a woman was there speaking about her father with dementia and the time she had to take off work and what she needed to do, people wanted to talk to her. So I think that, the CRCs and some of these places that play these function, I feel like if we're cutting them off, we're going backwards, that we're going to need that kind of community support for workers, for people who aren't working. I feel like it's a whole picture that we need, and I think we can do a lot better. And I feel like with this kind of community, I hope we can all work together.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
for your testimony. Now we're going to turn to Sharon Brown, who's with the Alzheimer's Association, a caregiver and volunteer for the Dementia Care Perspective. And what I wanted to mention before we go to our final witness, who is a longtime friend, that those of you who are interested in public comment, I was going to ask if either the sergeant or maybe Robert or somebody could collect the cards for us so that I can start managing the time. So thank you very much. Sharon, please begin.
Yes, thank you for
Thank you.
inviting me. The data on unpaid caregivers in California are staggering. In 2011, over 1.5 million Californians provided unpaid care to individuals with Alzheimer's and dementia. They provided over 1.7 billion hours of care, nearly 22 hours of unpaid care per week per caregiver. The total value of this unpaid care is valued at over $20 billion. In 2003, a 2003 study at Berkeley's Center for the Advanced Study of Aging found that caregivers of individuals with severe memory problems, such as Alzheimer's and dementia, are much more likely to report being physically drained, emotionally stressed, and experiencing interrupted sleep and financial hardship. This study suggests that while this care may be unpaid financially, caregivers do pay a physical and emotional price. My mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in December of 2001, a few weeks before her 67th birthday. She was utterly shocked and totally devastated hearing the news. I remember Mom repeating through her sobs, "Why me, Lord? Why me?" all the way to the car, and I felt helpless. My name is Sharon Brown, and I've been the caregiver for my mother since that day. An only child, the daily pressures of caregiving fell on my shoulders. Edmund, my devoted husband, gave me a solid foundation, assisting and supporting me wherever and whenever he could. Joe McCord, the family consultant with the Bay Area Family Caregivers Alliance, was the first to visit our home and do an evaluation of our family. Joe knew right away that Mom should be tested for Alzheimer's and gave us guidance on where the next steps were to pursue. After meeting with Joe, my goal was to provide my mom with a safe, secure, and stimulating environment to help her live as independently as possible. This has been a journey for us. The responsibilities are constantly changing. The uncertainty is unsettling. Just when you feel that you have the routine going and you think, yeah, I got this, I wake up the next morning, or maybe even from a nap, to discover the disease took another route and we have to adjust and go down another unfamiliar road. Allow me to highlight some of the key turning points in this journey. With some oversight, Mom was able to live independently in a senior apartment. Once a week, we would do groceries together, and I would prepare her meals. I got this. Then she forgot how to use a microwave. I found food spoiling in the sink and in the cabinets. Now, every night after I finished work, I would drive to Mom's apartment to make sure she ate dinner, clean up the dishes, and prepare non-perishable snacks for her to eat. Yeah, I got this, but I'm a little tired. Over time, she stopped bathing, so I would bring bubble bath to entice her to bathe after she finished dinner. Yeah, I got this. But Mom, you're not getting a bath every night. Well, one night, my husband and I were in Kansas City for a family reunion. I received that phone call at 10 p.m. from Highland Hospital saying Mom was found wandering in the streets of Oakland. I was able to contact my son to pick up my mom, take her back to the apartment, and the next morning my husband and I moved her in with us. I can't describe the high level of stress this brought into our home. I considered divorcing my husband so I could take care of my mom on my own. I felt so guilty for bringing this upon him. We sought help again through the Family Alliance Caregivers. I met with Heather Gray, who taught a 6-week course called Savvy Caregiver. This was a turning point for me because the course helped me to understand how the disease progresses. It was so clear to me that little pieces of my mother I once knew would soon disappear before my very eyes, never to return. Heather encouraged me to meet other caregivers at support groups. I am profoundly grateful for having people to talk to who understand what I was going through. The support groups and Heather's guidance contributed in keeping my marriage together, helping my husband and I focus on the next steps of care and tools to use to release some of the stresses. Once Mom settled in, we hired caregivers through IHSS, in-home support services, to help me with Mom's daily care. The caregiver would come early in the morning, get Mom cleaned up, dressed, and make sure she ate breakfast. We scheduled her to attend Alzheimer's Daycare Center 5 days a week. As a matter of fact, the same center that closed. The van would pick her up in the morning and arrive, and which would allow me and my husband to continue working. Yeah, I got this. Over time, Mom could no longer go to the daycare. She couldn't walk, was incontinent, didn't talk much, although she did have a fair amount of cuss words that she liked to use. And she would fight you if you tried to change her Depends. It was difficult for me or for the caregiver to bathe her, change her. Even from her wheelchair, she could deliver a pretty good right hook. It was time for skilled nursing. The support group and Heather helped me prepare for this phase. Although it still wasn't an easy decision, I had done a year's worth of research on different facilities. To tell you the level of stress, grief, and guilt that comes with this decision would take a whole nother day. I'm here today to share a few experiences, but mainly to ask several questions. How can family members and caregivers continue to work and help support our households if services like the Alzheimer's Day Center are further reduced and eventually funding eliminated? In the in-home support services, they allowed me to continue to work, pay taxes, and provide for my family. What would my choices be without this service? Leave my mom at home alone all day until one of us gets off work? My mom is like a 3-year-old, only with bigger Depends. Would you suggest I take her to work with me? Luckily, I was a realtor, and many days I did bring her along to show property with my clients or Sunday open houses. But that was only an occasional solution. Should I stop working to take care of my mother full time? I tried that, and it put my husband and me in a financial hardship for 2 years. Without the services provided by Alzheimer's Association and family caregivers, how could I have possibly acquired the knowledge and skills to keep my mother safe? Who do you know, friend or family member, that has received care either at home or in a skilled nursing facility, and what resources would you advise them to pursue? These wonderful programs that are already in place to support families will desperately need these invaluable services and must not be weakened or discontinued. The number of citizens that will look to you for our compassionate leaders is growing. I thank you for caring enough to listen to me today. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. That was very, very compelling. Thank you. Now let us turn to our final panelist, Paula Driver-Shimada, and we go back a ways to Yolo County, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Yep, to the Commission on Aging and Adult Services, so welcome.
Thank you. My name is Paula Driver-Shimada. I'm a human resources analyst in the Division of Human Resources at the University of California at Davis, and I was asked to come here today. The manager of the Work-Life program is out on an extended leave. And from May of 2005 through about June of 2008, I served as the work-life coordinator part-time. I had a 50-50 split position, and so I'm stepping in today on her behalf. I think I'm just going to cut to the chase with regards to what UC Davis offers as an employer to people who are in need of care. And so what we've done at UC Davis, and I think everybody here supplied a good setting for the statistics, but also the needs of caregivers. We have created, in order to train and teach our supervisory and managerial staff about FML, about telecommuting, about flexible work arrangements, we include scenarios in our supervisory training that includes the use of how to explain these offerings to the staff in their different divisions, departments, units, what have you, on the Davis campus. System-wide, we have now contracted, and I have handouts for all these things that I'm mentioning. We have now contracted with Sitter City, and when I say system-wide, this includes all 10 of the UC Davis campuses. And this just happened like a month and a half, 2 months ago. System-wide, we have now contracted with Sitter City, a corporate program to find elder care providers and other providers for babysitters, nannies, pet sitters even, for example. And again, I have the flyers here. Both in 2006 and again in 2010, we offered an Elder Care and Older Americans Month Brown Bag series in May, because May is Older Americans Month. So topically, we garnered information and would supply the feedback that came from, actually, when I was on the commission, Yolo County Commission of Aging and Adult-Based Services, we partnered with the Area 4 Agency on Aging, and we were able to tap in and send out a survey to all UC Davis staff who are 50 years of age or were 50 years of age and older at that time, and with that feedback created these brown bag series. And one interesting side note is that we found from these answers there were a lot of people compelled to retire, not for their own reasons and not feeling that they had enough money to supply for themselves in their retirement, but because of elder care circumstances that existed in their lives. So part of the staff development and professional services, and that's where I currently work, we have a library, and one section of our library houses elder care books. So there's a variety of titles, and anybody can come in and check those books out. And some of them are checklists, when you go home to visit, let's say around the holidays or for your summer vacation, things to ask or look for with regards to your elder. So these are self-help. Our Employee Assistance Program, or EAP, which we call Academic and Staff Assistance Program, or ASAP, not only provides, they're all trained counselors, they not only provide one-on-one counseling for all UC Davis faculty and staff, they've also led 6-week meditation courses, sometimes as many as 3 times a year. So again, that stress that we know caregivers go through, there are methods that and resources and programs on the campus. We created a web page with links to campus and community resources. Of note, and I'm going to repeat this, of note, most of these resources are available to all and do not require a special password, handshake, a person to be a UC Davis employee. So the work-life program, the brown bags, for example, that we mentioned, a lot of them, we have some specifically on work-life and wellness, again, to reduce the stress. Come on down. We'd love to see you on the campus. Your biggest problem will be parking. So I have those flyers here. We also have a medication log, and I brought some samples of that we created and had out there because it's very important. Again, this is not only for elder care, but all of us, I think, should have one of these. I personally keep mine in my glove compartment. And we also created, because with all of this, and we've heard it here today, it almost requires your knowledge of a special language, or the acronyms at least. So we do have an online glossary. And again, these are all web pages, so anybody who's interested can go out. There's no special password. You just get on to the HR Work-Life website, and you're there.
Wow.
Okay. So the other thing I thought I would mention is when I, as a human resources professional, think of working in the work-life world. There are two agencies that I head to on the web for up-to-date current information. And again, it is from the organization's perspective. Our SHRM, which is the Society for Human Resources Managers, and a lot of the elder care information, and I'll turn this all over to Robert when I'm done, what I had prepared, I gained from that site, as well as a World at Work. And it's 3 words, but they're all together, World at Work, and they have total rewards where part of that is elder care. And so as a human resources professional, again, those are 2 sites I go to all the time for this kind of information. I've been out of the field for a few years now. I was redeployed. The position, my half-time position as the work-life coordinator, was eliminated due to budget cuts. And I guess that would be my, in summation, I think we're headed, and I'm a representative of what's happening, is these key resources that can create more resources for the communities and connect and link people together are now being cut due to all the budget issues surrounding the state of California. And the other thing is, I'm on the incline. I'm not going to be turning 65, but I turned 50 my last birthday, so I'm a card-carrying AARP member. So I'm getting up there, but positions are being eliminated that I think are key. Provide key resources for folks.
I think that's one of the goals of this committee, is that we fix it before we need it, right? But
yeah.
I think we're pretty close. I want to thank this panel. Any questions or comments from my colleagues? Yes, Dr. Haldeman.
Thank you very much.
Indeed.
This has been, for me, the most difficult panel to listen to, having a family member diagnosed with early onset dementia who went in 6 years from being a functional business owner, employer, father, grandfather, to I don't know who. I think that it's important to hear your stories, especially because you put a face on it for those of us who spend most of our time in notebooks and tall stacks of paper. And I very much appreciate all of you coming, and also for the folks who are here just to listen. Thank you very much for showing up.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wagner, any comments or no? Thank you. I would echo that just to say I think everyone in this room has been a caregiver at one time or another, or we will need care one time or another. Yes. But your spirit and the peace that I see on your face is really very inspiring. So thank you very much. Thank you all. All right. Well, we are going to now move very quickly to public comment. And as I mentioned, I have invited those who wish to speak to fill out a card, so maybe we can organize the testimony a little bit more logically, and then you don't have to stand in line also. Why don't we first turn to continuation of the conversation on working caregivers. I have Victoria Whitworth from Davis, and I didn't call you just because you're from Davis, but why don't you come on forward? And then I would like to also invite I guess 2 individuals who wish to speak about caregiver resource centers and the Passages program. So that would be Sylvia Bernal from Calexico and Irene, who is here with us. I'm from Tehama County. That's pretty far distance. So please, if the 3 of you could come forward, Victoria Whitworth, Sylvia Bernal, and Irene from Tehama. So please go ahead and maybe about 2 to 3 minutes. We'd appreciate. Thank you.
I looked after my mother, who was diagnosed in early 2005 with Alzheimer's. She died in June 2010. But she lived with me for the last 3.5 years of her life, and it was by far the best choice for her. She lived in the Monterey Peninsula, and I couldn't leave my job and my home to go down there, but she knew my home and my friends very well, having visited. We tried assisted living. She was disoriented. It wasn't familiar to her. She became very withdrawn. And so her moving in was absolutely the best thing. It also helped me not to worry about her when she wasn't right there with me, which I did. It was stressful, but far less so. And she had a wonderful time. I'm here really to sing the praises of Del Oro, Caregiver Resources, and also through Del Oro, I found out about the YOLO Adult Day Health Center, which was a godsend to my mother. She absolutely loved it. She went 3 days a week. I had to reduce my employment to care for her, but we worked out a perfect schedule. But I feel I was very lucky. I'm a single woman. I had sole care of my mother. My siblings live far away. But I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones because my mother, first of all, was a very smart money manager. She could contribute to the household. She was very happy and a pleasure to be around for the most part. And even so, and I have many friends who were great, but even so, the stress and the grief that Sharon so beautifully described, it's not so much the physical exhaustion, which is certainly there, but the sheer grief of watching your beloved and smart and independent parent turn into a child. And I would not have been able to cope without Anne Spaller of Del Oro, who would call faithfully. It was always like this ray of sunshine, and it would sort of remind me that I'm not, I wasn't really paying attention to myself. And I really needed to as the sole caregiver to my mother. And Del Oro had all kinds of literature information about support groups, even individual counseling if one needs it. And as I say, they referred me to the wonderful YOLO Adult Day Health Center, which was fantastic.
I think I know about that.
Yes, I know you do. I know you do. So altogether, I just think I couldn't believe my luck when I discovered Del Oro. It was... I had already, thought I had, found every possible resource. I researched, read, but they were just wonderful. It was like, even my friends were wonderful, but to have an agency like that, which is solely there that knows the whole process of caregiving.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Yes.
Thank you for your testimony. Now let's hear from Sylvia Bernal, who wants to also talk about Caregiver Resource Centers.
Yes, I do. My name is Sylvia Bernal. I come from Calexico, which is the last town here in California.
Yes.
Border town between Mexicali, Baja California. I want to give you a little bit of statistics about where I live at. It's all agriculture. We have about 98% Mexicans that live in Calexico. We have a population of about 38,000, and across, which is a fence that separates us, we have 2 million people living in Mexico. We have a lot of cancer. We had the highest rate of Alzheimer's in our county. We've had a lot of asthma. But most of all, we have a lot of farm workers. We have a lot of people that work in farms, in agriculture, and they end up being 60, 70, and they're still working out in the fields. And there comes a point in time where they can no longer work, and they develop all these different illnesses. And I'm here because I sit in a lot of different organizations, but I'm not here to talk about myself. I'm here to talk about what the needs are for seniors. I had this friend of mine who needed to have open heart surgery, and she doesn't speak English, and she had to drive herself. Well, she had to go on the Greyhound, which San Diego is 2 hours away, to get to be admitted to the hospital because she was going to have open heart surgery. She was not able to have her husband go with her because she used to be the caretaker for her husband, who he's about 85 years old, and she's the one that ended up getting sick. So she's up in San Diego for close to a month. She stayed 3 weeks in the rehab center. Why? Because there was nobody to take care of her at home. I don't know if at one point in time any of you have ever been in a hospital and the best medicine is your family. This lady had nobody. She had a language barrier. She didn't know how to speak English. And she was at the point after being there for a month, she says, I'm going to leave if you don't let me go home. I need to be home. I need to take care of. She was still thinking about taking care of her husband. So after being in the hospital for over a month, she had to pay somebody to come and pick her up. And with the price of gas in where I live, it's $4.35 right now. So she had to pay somebody to come and pick her up and take her back home. I went to go visit her at home, and I was in shock when I walked into the house where she lives. She lives there with 4 other seniors. Why? Because she can't afford to pay rent. And the landlord abuses, because instead of charging, say $800, he charges by how many people are living in that home. And over there, the temperatures get to be 120, so the electricity bills are very, very high. If I'm going to mention her name, if Glafira would have had somebody to take care of her as a caretaker, she would not have had to have gone through all what she went through. And you know what? I walked into that house, and the floors, I was even afraid to step. I know I'm a little bit heavy, but not that heavy to make the floors feel like they were going to come apart. The conditions that these seniors live in, you know what? Shame in the United States. Shame in the United States for allowing people to continue to live like this. She was a farm worker. She was with Cesar Chavez. She promoted to get better labor contracts, to work better conditions to work under, and then she becomes ill. And she doesn't have any children because she didn't have any children with her husband, has nobody to care for her. And yet when she has worked all her life, and for one time that she needs help, she has nobody that can take care of her, that can see out for her. In the Valley of Imperial County, you have to wait 4 hours to get in to see a doctor, because we don't have, a lot of doctors don't want to come to Calexico. We're limited in medical conditions that we need there. And I'm here because I'm not here for myself. I don't care about myself. I care about these people that are in desperately need. And I just hope that you really take into consideration on the way you're going to vote, and that you continue to support these people that have always been there, picking up the crops for you to be able to eat your salad, for you to be able to have a healthy food. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Well, I think you might be a constituent of Assemblymember Manuel Perez, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll make sure that your testimony is transmitted. I know he's working very hard as well.
Yes.
All right, and we have Irene, is that right, from Passages, Tehama County. Thank you. Go ahead. Do you have a microphone? You probably need to speak in the microphone.
Okay. My name's Irene, and I'm my mother's caregiver. I've been her caregiver for 8 years. So one time she had to go, she went to this was pre-Passages time, and she had to go to a convalescent hospital. And I didn't like the surroundings of the convalescent. And I noticed, like, during the day or whenever, they just have them lined up against the wall, and it's like saying, who's going to go next? And when I left that place, I was in tears. I was crying because I didn't like to see my mother like that, and I had never seen my mother like that. And so I go home, I get in the car, and I cried some more. The car that she gave me, she had a Mercedes, that was her special car. And I drive away, and I kept going back every day, and I thought, I can't do this. I can't go in there. I'm going to have to take care of her. I'm an only child. I do have a daughter, but she does as much as she could too. So I took her home, and I thought, what am I going to do? I didn't know anything about it. A friend of mine, she told me about Passages, and I started to go to the support groups. My mother had gone to the daycare. And I feel that they're like, if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for the day, but if you teach him how to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. And that's how I feel Passages is. They're going to have me they taught me a lot of different things. I've gone to their support meetings and everything, trying to do everything I could go, because it's just so rewarding when I go there. Everybody is so nice. The family facilitators, they couldn't be better. I mean, they know everything about you, and they provide so much information. And it's just something that I could fall back on. And it made it so much easier to work with my mother, because my mother is a hard person to be with. She has dementia, so she's not an easy person to live with. So
Thank you.
whenever I feel upset or something, they call. And then at the support group, you learn a lot from the other caregivers, and you think, oh, I'm going to try this and I'm going to try that, and it does work out so much better. I can't imagine being without the Passages program. They provided so much for me.
Well, being in Tehama, your member, I don't have it right in my head who represents Tehama. Is that Mr. Nielsen? No, I don't know. Anyway, we'll make sure, we want to be sure that the constituents that have come so far, that your testimony is definitely transmitted to your member. So thank you very, very much for coming. And as I excuse this group, let me invite up, I believe we have a number of IHSS providers from Fresno, Pam Green, and I believe we also have a client and a provider, Mary and Martha Padilla from Fresno. Thank you for coming this long way. And also Janie McDaniel, who is with also UHW in San Francisco. All right. Thank you very much for being so patient, and we will look forward to hearing your testimony. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today. And whoever wished to lead out, Janie, is that right? Or is it Janie or Janie?
My name is Pamela Green.
Oh, Pam, okay.
I am a home care provider for 17 years for my brother since my mom passed in 1995. I want to thank the members that were here on time for the beginning, so they know what we're dealing with in-home health care. I'm kind of upset with those that had left, so they don't hear our story. But hopefully this can get back to the other members of the board.
We will.
Because we need in-home health care to be heard. The in-home health care system through IHS is broken. And what I mean by broken is our clients are not getting the care that they need. And what I'm here for is we need to have training through, number one, we need training for the social workers to reassess our clients properly. They're not being assessed properly for their hours. And number two, we need training as providers to care for our clients. I have 2 clients that I'm getting paid for. The third is my husband, who's disabled with diabetes in a wheelchair. I do not get paid for him because he has a job. Ms. Yamada, besides my brother as an in-home health care client, I also acquired a new client, my neighbor, who is from Indonesia. She's 83. She slipped and broke her hip on January 23rd of this year. She went into the hospital on the 24th and had emergency surgery. She was let out of community hospital in Fresno, California, the morning hours, like 9 a.m., to be expected to go home and with no treatment from the hospital. I had to go pick her up in my van because the family does not own a vehicle to pick her up. We actually had to lift her. She had no equipment, no wheelchair, no walker, no hospital bed, no sheets, no toilet seat. I donated a portable toilet to sit on side of her twin mattress that's sitting on the floor. Okay.
It didn't sound like hospital discharge.
We had no social worker come to the house for days. Okay. I didn't know how sick my client was. I didn't know she came home with MRSA. Also, she had a blood infection. We had to re-put her in the hospital on the 24th of February. We kept telling the in-home, not through IHSS, but the home nurse, how sick our client was getting, because I got another provider, a lady who graduated from nursing school. She was assisting me with me because she needed 24-hour care. I've contacted the social worker 3 or 4 times regarding the hours. She was getting previously, before her slip and fall, 49 hours. Dealing with the social worker this past week, it was brought to my attention that the hours were forged for January. I brought that to the attention of the worker and the manager, Joe, of IHSS in Fresno County. And they would do nothing to do the fraudulent investigation on those hours for the previous provider who was terminated. So therefore, when I started the care for this lady from Indonesia, 83, there were no hours available for me but 3 hours, and I worked 50. No one wanted to look into that. That's why I say the in-home health care is broken.
Okay.
We need training for the social workers to properly assess our clients. It's been 45 days now, and all the total hours I have for this client is 142. She has dementia. She's up in the morning tearing everything up, her diaper, throwing feces all on the wall. She needs to be spoon-fed. She needs her Indonesian special diet, which is rice, her dishes. She needs to have shots. When she came home on the 24th, I've never given a client shots. I'm not trained for shots. I'm not trained for the little drip that comes out of her wound from the hip surgery. So I need training as a provider to do my job better. I also need transportation for my client, which she had a doctor appointment on the 12th, but due to Medi-Cal not covering her transportation, we have to wait to get it approved. She can't be seen to a doctor. She is literally lying in the bed, her hospital bed, which took 33 days to get into the home. She's literally lying in that bed to die because we can't get her to the doctor, because she's totally bedridden with bed sores on her feet. She cannot be moved.
Well, you know, Pam Green, thank you very much for relating the many excruciating details of this case. Your assembly member is Henry Perea.
Yes.
And a case that has this much, what sounds to be a series of perhaps missteps, if I use that word generously, is something that, you know, certainly we're happy, well, we're not happy to hear about, but we're glad that you're able to relate it. But it sounds like it does need some other attention, you know, that's more immediate. So if we can, what I'd like to do is, since this is public testimony and we have several other people that wish to testify, we can certainly gather the details of this case and then attempt to address it, you know, where it can be addressed, which is in the field or back at the district.
I appreciate your time. I'm looking for training, though, for me to take care of my clients' needs. And also, it's very important, like I said, the healthcare system is broken for IHSS in Fresno County. We have several issues going on with the social workers there.
Well, social workers
that we need help with.
Hopefully they are actually social workers, because, you know, we don't have title protection. So we don't know if they're actually social workers or they're just hired under that title.
Yeah.
But if I can, let's move. Thank you very much. Let's move to our next witness.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Janie McDaniel. I'm from San Francisco, California. And am I close enough to this? I guess so.
Sure.
I'm here to mirror kind of what Pam said, and that is the subject of training. I know in this era we're all looking at expenses, money, cuts here and there, but I believe that training should be funded separately from, well, within the program, but with a different amount than is we have right now. The reason being, of course, we all work in home, and I take care of a 88-year-old World War II vet, and it's a friend, and it's a pleasure. But I do not believe I really have all the skills that I need to do him the best service. The only formal training I've ever had was a course that I paid for myself for CPR. And so that's the only one of anything. Everything else I've been tried to be proactive to find out as much information, and you know how easy that is with the doctors when you don't have you're not a legal family member. But or go on the internet and look up things and such. But I firmly believe that we are doing a bit of a disservice to all of our clients out there that because we do not have proper training. So I'd like to please ask for your consideration for a little extra expense for training. That's it.
Thank you very much. Well, you should be sure to hook up with the Veterans Administration representative so that you can avail yourself.
I heard some great things today.
Very good things. Thank you very much. Now we have Mary and Martha Padilla.
Okay.
And be sure to speak into the microphone.
I'm Martha Padilla.
Well, hello, Martha. How are you? Good. Go ahead.
I'll speak for
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Annie.
Okay, that's enough. Thank you.
Mom, help me.
I am going to help you. So
Okay.
now let me talk. Okay, don't lean on the glass. This is my daughter, and I've been taking care of her for a number of years. She's brain damage and cerebral palsy, though she was born normal. She was in a group home for like 26 years because they made me put her there because she kept running away. I had other children. I had jobs, single mother. Well, the homes that she was in, quite a number of them, she was always abused in many ways. I don't need to go into details. You probably heard of them all. And the other issues that I also took care of my mother with Alzheimer's till she passed in her home. Another lady too with the same issues. I didn't have no training. I did it. I don't know how I did it. I probably could have done a better job than what I did because I lacked the training. With my daughter, well, she's my daughter. I go by mother instincts, but yes. I do believe that we do, as care providers, need more training to deal with many issues that these clients have. Not only my daughter, but in different scales. Pam cover most of them. And it's true that we need all this training in order to provide better care for our clients, and then they can live at home with dignity and better care.
Thank you very much. Well, see, I guessed this right. Everybody talked about training in this panel.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I need to move on to the next set
Thank you
of
so much.
thank you people wishing to make public comment. I have Carolyn Brent, who's from Mountain House, California, to talk about some of the effects of post-caregiving. Also, let's see, I'm not sure the subjects here, but is it Jack Ryan or Royan, Elizabeth Katz, and Andrea Cook? So please begin. Welcome. Thank you very much for attending our hearing.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Carolyn Brent from Mountain House, California, and thank you, Madam Chair, and also the members. For 12 years, starting in 1997, I was one of 8 children to take care of our father with the early signs of dementia, and the continuum went to the point where he ended up having a massive hematoma, which is bleeding on the brain, and I mean, that was basically the end of it, but it was 12 full years. And this right here, picture is worth 1,000 words. Wow. This is 12 years of financial, legal and medical documentation of taking care of my father. And caregivers, they need a break. They need every resource to help them imaginable. And society really needs to, break out of the mindset that we are not getting older. It appears, especially in the U.S., it seems like once our elders are sick, they cannot contribute to society. It appears that we throw them away and we walk away from them, and they're lonely and they are mistreated in most cases. And I'm just basically being honest because I've lived it. I have not taken care of my father since 2008, nor have I seen him, but that's another issue. But I will always stand for caregivers. We are all getting older, and none of us want or deserve to be mistreated. And one day that we're going to be in the same seats of our elders. So I am actually a supporter of caregivers. I have created a portal called caregiverstory.com that has every resource in the United States that a caregiver could go to help themselves. So just like the panel that left prior, they're saying they need help, they need education. That is the truth. So that's why I say a picture is worth 1,000 words. And my father was a veteran. He did have medical benefits through the VA. Also, he had Social Security. And then, of course, I'm 55 years old. I don't remember any of my 40s because I cared for my dad during those years. But I dipped into my own 401k to keep my father in private assisted living. So now I have to say, who's going to take care of me? Because I have used all of my funding to care for my dad, to keep him out of state funded facilities. And that's why I'm here.
A very important point as part of our hearing today is, paying for the future of caregiving. So thank you very much for that testimony. Let's see. Elizabeth Katz, please proceed.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I would like to thank you for convening this hearing on such an important topic. My name is Elizabeth Cates. I'm representing the ARC, the Association of People with Developmental Disabilities and their families, and I'd like to talk just briefly about the challenges posed by families in our situation who are simultaneously caring for a son or daughter with developmental disabilities as well as an aging parent. My husband and I are the parents of a 30-year-old son with a developmental disability who lives at home with us. David attends an adult day program in Roseville for 6 hours each day and is with us the other 18 hours. His poor communication skills, level of functioning, and lack of judgment necessitate 24-hour supervision for him. For 30 years, we have coordinated our daily schedules so that one of us is always with him, except for a week of summer camp and brief periods of respite. We ensure his health and safety and create opportunities for him to participate in community life, including him in virtually everything we do. Since 1998, in addition to caring for David, we also cared first for my mother-in-law, then for my mother, each of whom were in their 90s and had dementia. They died a year ago within 3 months of each other. Because we had no one to care for David while we were at the hospital with each of our mothers in their last hours, he was present for both deaths, something that he should have never had to experience. Our experience is not unique. I meet many families who have extended family caregiving responsibilities which consume their lives. Our family, like so many others, has made the choice to keep our son at home. This choice is not without hardship and consequences. Often parents are unemployed or underemployed because of caregiving responsibilities. They become distanced from families and friends. They navigate the system alone and with profound uncertainty about the future. This is simply unacceptable given what we know about providing a comprehensive and effective system of care for people with developmental disabilities and their families. We are told that this is our family's responsibility, and we have accepted this willingly and because we love our son deeply. However, we are now 65 years old, and we are among the 70,000 aging caregivers whose children continue to live at home. No one has ever asked us how David will be cared for when we die. It is assumed that care will be provided for him under the Lanterman Act, but the reliability, never mind the quality, of such care is questionable. I have grave concerns about his future as each year brings more cuts and erosion of the Lanterman Act. You are probably aware that our community suffered a tragedy last week when the mother of a young man with autism took her life after taking her son's life. It is clear that her outlook for her son's future was grim, and the stress of caregiving was no longer sustainable. Her situation is more common than anyone would like to believe. Despite my son's disability, his health is good, and it is logical to assume that he will outlive us. After spending our lives trying to give our son the best possible life he can have, it is terrifying for me to think about the kind of situation he could be in simply because he will outlive us and have to rely on a fragmented, underfunded community system to care for him. As we try to plan for his future, we struggle to find information and resources despite my son being a regional center client. There is no anticipatory guidance and no support for undertaking this very difficult task. I know there is a wealth of information about long-term planning and care, but it is not readily accessible and is not routinely disseminated to those of us who need it. We need access to an organized system of support that is systematic and effective and available. We can and must do better. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Very important testimony about intergenerational issues. Mr. Ryan, pardon?
Rogers.
Oh, Rogers. Mr. Rogers. Well, you have a sweater on, too. So,
Right.
So would you like to speak into the microphone so that we can hear your testimony?
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you for having
Absolutely.
me talk like this. My name is Jack Rogers.
Yes, sir.
No relation to Fred. However, I did have a Montessori school years ago, so I got labeled. I started my career as an accountant, but I retired as a marriage family therapist up in Chico. And my wife has been diagnosed with advanced emphysema, and she's on oxygen 24/7. Mentally, she's alert. She can still drive, work on the computer, but physically, like today, she shuts down. She can barely get out of a chair, even though she's on high reading of oxygen. So as a result of this, I got in contact with Passages, and I joined their support group, and I go once a month. I'd like it to be held twice a month because the stories I hear every meeting are just heart-sickening, and I hear them today from other families. And being the old accountant, I say, why do you want to cut the services for 14,000 people? I think that's the number I was given. And that kind of money. When the caregivers will be faced with what? No resources. They'll have to go somewhere else, and it's going to come back on the government. So it's not very cost-effective to eliminate these programs. I think they must continue.
To the Department of Finance. We would love to have
I know.
your testimony.
And the other thing is, I know this is probably not the group I could talk to, but now I'm on my soapbox. Let's raise income. Let's not keep cutting. Let's raise income. Let's get some money from the oil companies for their drilling. Let's close the loophole in Prop 13. There's money sitting there, and it's not difficult to get to. So, cut. It's always easy.
Mr. Amiano would have loved to hear you talk about Prop 13. I'll make sure he hears your testimony.
It's easy to hit the little people. That's easy, and kick them around. But I think it's time we cannot eliminate these programs. We're going to pay for it as a society, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very, very much for that testimony. And is it Ms. Cook?
Yes, Andrea Cook.
Andrea Cook, welcome.
Thank you for staying and listening.
Sure.
I'm Andrea Cook. I reside and work in Long Beach, California. I'm a civil rights lawyer, and I am the current president of the California Mental Health Aging Coalition. I came today to speak to you as a former caregiver. My mom passed away about 9 months ago.
Sorry. Sorry.
But I would not presume to offer any personal testimony given the caliber and the heartfelt statements that you've heard today. But I would like to iterate the statements that this gentleman has said, which is to cut this relatively nominal amount of money in the face of the enormous benefit that it provides is unimaginably foolhardy in to my way of thinking. I was taking notes as I was listening. I heard a statistic that 50%, 47% of caregivers end up with chronic depression, that lost dollars for caregivers in terms of income. I heard another statistic, $300,000 lost for a caregiver who steps off, I think the terminology was the escalator of a career. Those are incredible tax dollars and income dollars. It's a lack of productivity. As a civil rights lawyer, I often see people who have lost their jobs as a result of trying to comply with the Family Medical Leave Act or having employers who are not compliant. So there's a loss of productivity here, there's a loss of income, and certainly these sad stories, but I think it just makes incredible financial sense to maintain these dollars, and I would ask you so urgently to please consider this. Thank you so much for this hearing.
Thank you very, very much. Very important testimony about, the effect on earnings over one's lifetime or savings that have been used for other purposes. So thank you. And for, I think, our final word, not because I wanted him to wait till the very end, but Marty Omoto with CDCAN, I think always has very appropriate closing comments. So, Marty,
I'll be brief.
Thank you very much.
I know that you guys have been here for quite a long time, and there's another hearing on disability issues going on. Actually, this is not my statement. My name is Marty Omoto. I'm with the California Disability Community Action Network, CDCAN. I'm also a family member, and for a period of about 17 years, I was a caregiver or served as one of the primary caregivers to my sister who had developmental disabilities. And later on, periodically, I served in that role for my father until they both died. And all I can say is everything you heard today was about the complexities of the services or the absence of services and the barriers. And one thing I just want to add to all that is I knew the system and I knew how it worked. I had worked in the assembly at that point in time. I had all the connections that you would want, and yet the stress and the anxiety and that I faced, there was days that I wished that some days I wished, and in my weakest moments, that it would just be taken away from me. And, you never get over feeling that way. But the fact that the greatest and the hardest job of a caregiver, and I was not paid, I was an unpaid caregiver, and I don't regret that part of it. It was just the constant barriers, whether it was dealing with Medi-Cal or the regional center or the county or the hospital. Being a family member in any one of the settings in a facility, there was times when she was in an acute care facility, it meant nothing. And what happened in the stories you hear about the anxiety and the stress level of family members who are caregivers is real. And that is brought on because of the impact of budget reductions and other problems. And so one thing I would ask is that the legislature really considers, when it's making changes in public policy, when it's making changes in terms of reductions to services or elimination of services, that you really consider broadly the impact, which is the focus of this hearing. And that when you do things like that, I know I'm speaking to the choir, whether it's Democrats or Republicans, but the stress level and the anxiety on families is just overwhelming. My father is the most optimistic person when he was alive, and he raised my sister through most of her life, and most of it was fine, except when she grew into her 30s and 40s, her health needs were so extensive, so difficult. And one day I never saw him break, but he broke and said, I didn't think it would be this way. I didn't think it would be this hard. And so I saw my role as a son to take that over from him. But I also didn't think it would be that hard and that difficult. And one last request is to do what you did today was to bring attention and focus on this issue as much as you can. And I guess that's the best that we can expect, and I thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marty Omoto. You are one of our angels in this fight to ensure that caregiving and supports for families, continues to be in the spotlight. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is now 20 minutes to 5. I want to thank everyone for hanging in there, especially our staff. I want to thank Robert McLaughlin, my consultant, Eric Gelber, the Human Services consultant, and Mary Bellamy, who's the Republican consultant to the Aging and Long-Term Care Committee. Also Sarah Lofton, our committee secretary, the sergeants, and everyone who traveled so far today. This hearing is concluded. Thank you.